So who was right? Let's bring in our Fox panel. Pat Powell is from Powell Financial. She is here with us. Peter Schiff is actually in New York now to face off one-on-one with the human beings that are also on the panel. He's author of this book, Crash Proof. Victoria Barrett, senior editor of Forbes magazine, and Gary Kaltbaum is from GaryK.com. Good to see you all. Peter Schiff, your views, I think, contrast more sharply with the president's than anybody's. Tell us why he's wrong.
Well, of course, he has an agenda. He's the president. He's trying to talk up the economy. That's all he ever does. And he tries to say that everything is great because the statistics say they're great. He claims there's no inflation because the CPI says there's no inflation. Or he says the economy is growing because their GDP figures show that. But the reality is very different. I think we're already in a recession. I think the recession is getting worse. Inflation is not under control. Inflation is already high and getting more pervasive. And so the economy is in trouble. I mean, if it wasn't in trouble, why would we be talking about a 50 basis point rate cut? Why would the Fed be cutting rates?
You're here in person. You can look at us.
Oh, they told me to look at the camera.
No. You can look at us. It's all right.
They told me to look at the camera. But, I mean, why would the Federal Reserve be cutting rates if the economy were really growing as fast as the government claims?
Yeah, and the president, Gary Kaltbaum, also saying the economy is going to slow down, and this is exactly the time not to raise taxes. So which is it? Things are great or things aren't so great?
Well, first off, it is the worst time to raise taxes. But I got to tell you,
Is there ever a good time, Gary?
No, not really. And I got to tell you, I've been carrying the water for President Bush for a while because he had the facts behind him. But I got to tell you, I don't think he has the facts behind him anymore. And you can sit there and talk low inflation from government stats, but every bit of stuff that the American consumer buys right now is going way up in price. And if he wants to talk about underpinnings, in that statement, he forgot to mention almost a depression in the housing market and very restrictive lending out there to make things any better. So I am not in his camp right now. And I have to tell you, to add to what Peter said, if things were so fine, why is this administration trying to come out with price controls in the mortgage market for the interest rates, which I think is absolutely crazy. We could talk about that also.
That's the first time I've heard the phrase price controls for what the administration has planned for the mortgage mess.
Boy, that's pretty scary, isn't it? The last time, wasn't it Nixon who did the price controls, and that was not exactly a success, was it?
Yeah.
We are in a slowing economy, and I think that that's really what you have to pay attention to. We're in a slowing economy to the extent that the credit crunch and or the deteriorating subprime lending pushes us further along. It doesn't take that much to dip us into recession. But recession is not a disaster. I went back and looked at the last 12 recessions that we've had, and these are all post-Great Depression. Of those, 9 of the 12 had a duration from peak to trough of between 6 months and 11 months. So it is not a disaster. It is not the depression that Gary is referring to. It's obviously there are some problems in housing, and people who have gotten caught up are feeling a great deal of pain. But you don't want to take that pain and put it on the rest of the economy. The majority of us are doing fine. The majority of people out there are doing fine. But we might tip. I think we're slowing. I'm not sure we're going to tip. I don't think so. But there's a risk here.
Victoria, what are you thinking about this?
Well, the interesting thing about recessions is that they're becoming much shorter in duration. So, to echo what's just been said, even if we are in a recession or headed for one, it will be a short period of time, and most people probably won't notice. The key here is unemployment. And so far, even though we've had all this financial turmoil and high oil prices, unemployment has stayed relatively low. And what concerns me is in the state of California, we've seen unemployment creep up. And is that a sign of things to come? And are folks going to start doing more layoffs? That could be really dangerous.
I want to go back to the word underpinnings that was used. The thing for me is, if I've studied markets and the economy going back many years, is economies just don't top out in one fell swoop. They top out over time. And all I am letting you know, for the last 2 years, the underpinnings have been getting less and less helpful to the economy, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of the tipping process. I didn't say anything about a depression. I said housing is heading there. My biggest issue is I don't see anybody doing anything that's going to fix things. Lower interest rates, that's not going to do the trick. Markets over time going to do the trick. I just hope they don't do too much
to
really cause problems.
Peter, let me ask you something I've always wanted to ask. When was the last time the economy was in good shape by your standards?
Well, it's been a long time. These previous previous recessions that Pat mentioned.
Can you mention an era or a time?
Let me just finish this point. It's an important one. The reason that past recessions were so shallow.
My question was important,
yes,
too.
but the reason that past recessions were so shallow is because the Fed was able to minimize them through monetary policy. That created this gigantic mess that we have now. If we had had more deep recessions in the past, the one we're about to enter, or that we've already entered, wouldn't be as gigantic as it's going to be. The Fed cannot save us from this anymore. There's no more, they can't pull any rabbits out of the hat.
So when were we doing everything right?
Well, look, we had a great economy during the Industrial Revolution. We had a great economy.
We have to go back to the Industrial Revolution?
We had a great economy probably following World War II. But no, unfortunately, since we've been in the 1970s, 1980s,
since we got off the gold standard.
Yeah, we've been printing a lot of money. We've been borrowing money from the rest of the world. We've had a consumer-based economy that's created this gigantic mess.
Yeah, the only thing that I think Peter and I actually agree on is I don't think lower interest rates are going to move us forward. And the reason I say that is the reason lower interest rates usually move you forward is it encourages you and me to borrow. And we don't have a problem with people wanting to borrow right now. What we have is a problem with people wanting to lend. And I don't think lower interest rates is going to get us what we've gotten in the past.
Okay, we'll hold off on that for the